Michael at the foul line, a shot on Elo, good! The Bulls win! The American dream. I have a dream. Jackie Robinson smashes the double.
They said he couldn't do it, but he did. As the 20th century came into full swing, the continuity of the common ideology of racism was prominently seen worldwide. In North America, more specifically the United States, the black community was perceived as a minority compared to the dominantly white population, as they had less rights and were often segregated from the rest. These mistreatments occurred at the local levels in ways such as the enforcement of the Jim Crow laws and in public transportation, all the way to the national level where black codes were implemented and white people had the advantage over blacks securing job opportunities. Across the Atlantic, as the Germans recovered from the catastrophic loss of World War I, the Third Reich rose to power, and with it, the notion of a singular pervasive Aryan race was spread throughout Europe. This meant that not all races and ethnicities were treated equally. In 1933, laws were passed excluding non-Aryans from the workforce, leaving them helpless.
In the midst of the chaos, a man named Jesse Owens set out to change the course of history, even though this meant overcoming multiple obstacles. Owens was affected by the racist ideologies during the beginning of the 20th century, some of which he experienced devastating occurrences such as inequality in schools and racism from the United States government, along with oppression internationally in countries like Germany. However, he overcame multiple adversities such as proving Hitler's notion of the dominant Aryan race to be wrong, and he became a role model for future civil rights leaders.
To begin, the educational system in the United States was heavily skewed towards the white population. As segregational laws were codified and carried out, the African Americans definitely had the short end of the stick. In Jesse Owens' case, persistency is a word that can be used to describe how he overcame this adversity. Not until he shattered numerous records in high school did the Ohio State University finally accept Jesse Owens. Author Layla Taha expresses that Jesse Owens was denied a scholarship and housing on campus because of the color of his skin. This illustrates the oppression against African Americans while progressing through their education. It is quite plausible to assume that a white athlete who competed at the same caliber and same time as Jesse Owens not only would have been offered a scholarship from a university, but also would have been able to live on campus. I came to Sports Immortals to sit down with founder and sports historian Joel Platt. Can you describe your interactions with Jesse Owens?
Very nice man. He invited me to his apartment and he gave me numerous mementos.
Did Jesse tell you anything that he felt any racism from the United States government when he was back in the States after the Olympics?
Well, it was known that Hitler, was a white supremacist and was against the Jewish athletes and black athletes. But when Jesse came back to the United States, he wasn't welcomed like the athletes of today. He won 4 gold medals, but when he came back to the United States, he had a hard time getting a job.
Did anything happen with him and President Roosevelt?
Well, it's rumored that President Roosevelt didn't invite him to the White House the way he did the athletes like the presidents of today.
I have a quote here from a historian named Henry Large. He says that Owens told the public that it wasn't Hitler who snubbed him, but President Roosevelt who did. What's your view on that?
We have to remember that Roosevelt wasn't like President Taft, who was very friendly with the former champion John L. Sullivan, was an athlete himself. Roosevelt unfortunately got polio at a young age. He was in a wheelchair. So I don't know if he had that kind of appreciation for athletes. Was he a racist? I couldn't say, but at that time he was very busy, I think, preparing for war. But, there was racism in the country all the way back to the days of slavery. So I don't know if it was Roosevelt treating Jesse Owens any different because he was black, or whether all Olympic champions were treated basically the same.
Okay, and my last question is, during your 70-year journey,
the belief of the black minority was not constrained by the United States borders, but dispersed globally in many different forms. After an excruciating loss in World War I, the Germans finally had a chance to rewire people's thoughts on the reputation of the country. Political leader Adolf Hitler believed the 1936 Olympics created an opportunity to showcase the Nazi regime. After boycotts in the United States were shut down because Hitler convinced the United States Olympic director Avery Brundage that they were not persecuting non-Aryan races, Jesse Owens went to Berlin to compete. Owens, who was genuinely celebrated more in Berlin during the Olympics than in the United States, broke 3 world records and tied a 4th one in under 60 minutes. Owens outplayed the favorites and was able to claim the gold in multiple events and proved Hitler wrong, accomplished the unpredictable even when no one wanted him to, and proved his persistence through not giving up even when the odds were not in his favor.
the depressing truth about this was that Adolf Hitler did not congratulate Jesse on his stupendous accomplishments. Hitler, representing the country of Germany, signified how disrespectful and racially abusive the Nazi regime truly was. This short moment of their leader denying Jesse of at least a handshake reflected how these people thought of African Americans. More powerful than the true victory of winning 4 gold medals was disproving Hitler's belief of a dominant Aryan race. Although this was seen as a triumph, this setback in Hitler's scheme did not shift the course of history entirely. Some of these Olympians were later killed in the Holocaust, all of them belonging to minority groups such as the Jewish people. From this we learn that the oppression that occurred in Germany was not an attempt at persecution towards the black population, but an attempt to prove why there should only be one race, the Aryan race.
To tie this together, the racism that took place in Nazi Germany not only impacted the life of Jesse Owens, but was also an effort by Hitler to gain full legitimacy across Europe by changing people's perceptions. Not only did Owens rewrite Olympic history, he impacted the lives of aspiring athletes around the world. He became a role model for African Americans by pursuing his dreams in a racially divided society. John Matthew Smith claims that white and black Americans pointed to Owens as a model African American who overcame poverty and racism. Yet his life story was also a story of American hypocrisy. Jesse Owens was not always treated like a hero. In the U.S., he faced racial discrimination daily. Furthermore, during the Great Depression, African Americans were often the last to find a job and the first to lose their job. This pattern still continued for Owens even after his Olympic glory as he struggled to make a living.
Owens' prosperity during the 1936 Olympics was not limited to himself. He also was formative to future generations. Platt further asserts that Jesse gave several black children hope that they too could achieve victory in sports. He also portrayed an image that told people to do what they want to, even if someone tells them no. Owens showed children and adults that even though the color of their skin might be different, it should not stop them from reaching their goals. The African American society now had hope for their futures, and people of other races had hope for them too.
Edmonds points out that, in spite of a checkered career, whose low point came when he engaged in races against horses a few years after the Berlin triumph, Owens achieved a measure of success. Owens was not constrained to the field of sports. He became a refined public speaker, a black activist, and most importantly, a voice of equal opportunity and social mobility after his accomplishments at the 1936 Olympics. In addition, Joel Platt expresses, Jesse became the perfect role model for black children all over the world and gave them hope that success could be achieved. In conclusion, during the first half of the 20th century, the world was gripped by racism. The story of Jesse Owens reflected this belief by showing racial discrimination in schools and racial oppression not only in the United States, but around the world. It was Jesse's steadfast determination that enabled him to overcome all of these tragedies. Owens did not let turn back stop him from achieving goals that most thought were unattainable. His perseverance allowed him to become an exemplar all through the African American community, inspiring future civil rights leaders.
Throughout this uphill struggle of man versus world, the traits of relentlessness and persistence were exemplified as Jesse Owens strived to negate those who said he couldn't do it. And in the words of Jesse Owens, the battles that count aren't the ones for gold medals. The struggles within yourself, the invisible, inevitable battles inside all of us, that's where it's at.